I have been seeing way too many businesses for more than 25 years having significant issues. And I will say that I was in that, invisible expert and undervalued expert stage for a really long time. It was one of those things sometimes you're literally feeling like I'm screaming out into the void. Why isn't anyone listening? Why isn't anyone noticing? And you start getting to a certain point and it's like, all right, something is going on here.
Welcome to She Coaches Coaches, the podcast where we have thoughtful, honest conversations about what it really takes to build a thriving coaching business. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and before building my business, I spent years as a senior corporate leader. Now, today, I work with coaches who are smart, well trained, and deeply capable, and who want clarity about how to grow in a way that feels aligned and financially sustainable. On this show, I sit down with successful coaches to explore the real decisions behind their success, how they got started, what shifted as they grew, and the mindset and business choices that helped them gain momentum without burning out. Whether you're early in your coaching journey or refining a business you've already built, She Coaches Coaches is here to offer perspective, confidence, and grounded insight to support your next chapter. To learn more about how I work with people, go to my website, stepintosuccessnow.com. And now let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. I have got another wonderful guest for you. Her name is Jennifer R. Glass, and she is a top best-selling author and multi-award winning business growth architect. She's the CEO of Business Growth Strategies International and author of the book, It's the Bottom Line That Matters. It's actually a series. She combines business coaching with payment processing, review management, marketing, and web services to help small and medium-sized businesses uncover hidden revenue and boost their bottom line. Jennifer is also a speaker, trainer, TV show producer, and the host of 2 podcasts of her own. Jennifer, welcome to the show. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Candy, and I am thrilled to be here too. Thank
So
you.
tell me, what is exciting right now? Like, what are you most excited about in your business these days?
Thank you so much for asking that. Excuse me, asking that question, Candy. So, one of the things that's super exciting in my business is a dramatic shift in focus as well as in what it is that we're actually doing now in the business. And I'm going to start just responding back to your question with a question of my own. For you and your listeners, how many of you have been finding that your sales and marketing, your revenue and profit have been having some sort of friction in the process, right? There's
I'm
something
glad you
there that's
asked.
just, it's there, right? There's hidden revenue leaks, marketing and sales. It's just not working out the right way. There's a lead problem or a closing problem. There's a whole bunch of different things that are there. So what I started doing is starting working with even the bigger companies and helping them really figure out exactly where that friction is, diagnose it, and then get rid of it, or at least find the leverage that allows them to really start seeing significant opportunity.
How did you start with this? Like, what drew you to that?
So it really came from the latest book that I put out back in February called Trust Based Selling. I'm not going to toot my own horn and say, it was a number one bestseller or anything. That's not even the point. But everything came through there. And what I did was I created through the book a different kind of framework, and we called it Genuine, Gennuine, the Genuine framework. And it's all based on these different pieces that are available in terms of how do we start really understanding the trust that is needed in business? How do we understand where the value and the momentum that we're looking at in business, and putting all of those different pieces together and understanding, this is exactly what I've been doing already for years, regardless, in a traditional business coaching space, just bringing it out to even larger businesses.
And so the shift from the smaller to mid-sized businesses to larger businesses, there's got to be some transferable lessons that some of these small businesses could have. Most of the listeners here are coaches. Many of them are solopreneurs. Perhaps they have a virtual assistant. They might have a 1 or 2 person team, or they might just be just themselves. What are you noticing in that transfer?
So you're totally right in terms of the coaches. And unfortunately, a lot of coaches that I have spoken with are still trying to figure it out. Not saying that they don't know their piece, but they're still having that I need to really continue to figure out a couple more pieces in terms of the process. So the first issue is really if you look at what it is that they're doing, they may not even realize sometimes that their own marketing is holding back the sales. And so, how do we start overcoming that marketing? How do we start realizing exactly where some of these problems are? I mentioned earlier about that diagnostic that I work with. And the diagnostic, as an example, one of the archetypes that we have is invisible expert, right? I put all the information out there. I'm an expert. I'm doing everything, but nobody knows me, right? I am a gem. How do I get the word out though? And then another one is you're the undervalued expert. And that's because you're giving everything away. People have become used to, I am just going to give, give, give. And sometimes I forget to ask for the sale. And sometimes I just give way too much before I can even get to the sale. Because if you just gave it to me, why am I going to buy? And so that's just two of the archetypes that we already talk about in terms of what you get in that diagnostic. But it's how do we start really figuring out, all right, now that at least I know what my issue is, how do I start overcoming it? And then how do I start making it all work?
Find the problem, identify the problem, and then understand it. And then from there, come up with an action plan to correct it so that they can probably find the next problem. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but I mean, business is a continuing evolution. Usually you create another challenge on the next level up that you're doing, right? That's super interesting. Huh. Okay. So tell me how this is a quite a switch for you, and it's also a different approach for a business coach, right? So how did you come to doing this? Like, what was the pivot for you?
The pivot really came from the simple fact that I have been seeing way too many businesses for more than 25 years having significant issues. And I will say that I was in that, invisible expert and undervalued expert stage for a really long time. It was one of those things sometimes you're literally feeling like I'm screaming out into the void. Why isn't anyone listening? Why isn't anyone noticing? And you start getting to a certain point and it's like, all right, something is going on here. I need to figure out what exactly it is that maybe I can do to switch. And as I was working with my clients, one of the things that I started realizing is that, all right, even if I'm doing it in a group format in my business coaching offering, which is all that I was doing, that and mastermind was all that I was doing in the coaching space. I wasn't taking one on one clients anymore. But what I was doing was I was still diagnosing what exactly the problem is with their businesses, still diagnosing where additional issues are and start giving the solution to coming up with even more benefit. And one of the things that I said I wanted to do is by 2040, I want to help 10 million businesses really start growing. And as an invisible expert, I can't do that the same way like I can going after much larger kinds of folks that really can be a huge benefit because now more people are going to be exposed to what it is that I'm talking about. More people are going to see exactly where it is. And that's also why I came out with revenuefrictionindex.com, because that is the diagnostic that we work with to really help people. And so I know individually I can't help 10 million businesses, not right away anyway, but through all the things that I am doing and the speaking and things along those lines, that helps. And that's how I've been moving into this phase.
Looking over the next 1 to 3 years, now you've shared with us the long-term goal, but in this short term, what's something really meaningful that you'd really like to accomplish through this new approach?
So the really meaningful connection is going to really see what exactly these changes that the businesses that I'm going to be working with over the next 1 to 3 years, what it is that they are going to be doing, and especially how do they help their community. That's one of the things. And I'll tell you, I've been accused of being utopian because I help a business, they hire more people, They have more income that they can now hire people, disposable income that they can now donate more to the nonprofits. They can do so much more in their local communities or the broader community, whatever it is that they support. And that is one of those things that if we can really start seeing exactly how that ripple effect is there, that's what I'm really looking forward to. And I love seeing that for all the years I've been doing this, but that's what I'm really continuing to look forward to seeing.
I've got the next question might sound a little bit odd, but it's got a bit of a twist to it. So, what might get in your way? And the reason I'm asking is business owners are listening to this show and they're always thinking about what's in their way. Is there like something that you can share that's going to help them maybe even avoid that hurdle?
So a lot of that is going to really come down to a couple of things. First of all, you need to understand what your personality is, right? A lot of us, we go into business, whether you're a coach, you're a business owner, you are um, chief cook and bottle washer. I mean, it really doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. But if you don't understand who you really are and what your own stumbling blocks might be in front of you, you're going to constantly be running into those stumbling blocks and falling over them. So the very first thing you need to do is figure out exactly what it is that is going to be there and how do you start removing it. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is also paying attention to what are those common mistakes that I'm always making. And that's not necessarily the same as the stumbling block, but it could be that the mistake is, all right, so let's go back to, like I said, the archetypes, the invisible expert that I mentioned before. So you have the invisible expert. And one of the mistakes may be, though, outside of being the invisible expert, that when I start talking, I now go and I bring in that undervalued side, right? And that's a completely different mistake from the invisible side. Or it can be I do the business, I'm really great at it, but then I don't actually do a case study. I don't ask for a case study. I don't ask for that review so that more people can start getting the value. I don't ask for the referrals in a way that makes sense to the business at the time when I actually just gave them the most brilliant solution. And that's when they have the most gracious perspective on you. You need to understand how all of that is going to be playing out to see how you move forward. So there's a lot of those things that really can get in the way and how you can avoid having that same pitfall. So it's really going to come down to a couple of the different ways that we look at the different pieces. So it's going to be, in addition to the invisible expert and the undervalued expert, we're going to also be looking at the people who are really not clear in terms of what it is that they are doing in certain areas. We're looking also at different kinds of folks that are going to be struggling and just not identifying the right kinds of markets, things along those lines, in terms of where they're going and how all of these pieces are ultimately tying in. The fact is that when we look at the different archetypes that are out there, there's a lot that we really need to be thinking about in terms of, all right, I know at least this is my issue. I can now identify, like you said before, identify or diagnose, identify, diagnose, solve. And then, like you mentioned, also, how do I get past the next problem? And those are all different ways that we start moving in that direction.
You've talked about how you work with people, the shifts that you've made in your business, and sort of that forward dream that you've got all along the way. What have you learned about yourself while you're doing this work?
What I learned about myself is that I am a whole lot more resilient than I thought I was if I look back 25 years ago, especially over the last 21 years that I've had my business, or just about 21 years. If I go back to where I was then and where I am now, the ideas that I learned over the time, the resiliency is really one of the biggest differentiators from where I was then. If I look back all the way at the beginning of my business, I also took no a lot more personally. And I had to learn to understand no doesn't mean no, Candy, I don't like you. It doesn't mean no, Jennifer, I don't like you. It means, you know what? Right now may not be the right time. Doesn't mean no is forever. It doesn't mean no is shut the door and leave me alone. It just means it's not right for right now. You want to talk to me in 6 months, a year, 3 years down the line? It may be a completely different solution. And I started my business in the credit card processing space, like you read in my bio. And it was all about how do I really start talking to people? And I was going in the very beginning also, all right, I'm going to save you money. And I realized pretty quickly if I keep saying that, I'm setting the relationship on that. I'm not setting it on value. And so those were all things that I really started learning over the years. And where I am now is in a position that I really want to keep giving back to others in that same position. And that's why, again, I set that goal by 2040 to help the 10 million small businesses. And I'll share with you and your listeners. I mean, I set 2040 as the goal because that's when I intend on running for president of the United States. So that's where I am.
So it's got to go hand in hand, right?
Just a little bit.
This is really interesting. So the topic of resilience as a growth place, and then a deeper understanding of the word no. And so many people that are in business, they've heard it. No doesn't mean forever. No isn't personal. But the words you said also have there's sort of that intention behind it, that there's the underlying integration of really believing that. Like we can tell ourselves, well, no, it's not really personal, but then notice how you feel. Notice what your reaction is. And it can take time to integrate that new level of understanding. It
Very
Yes.
much so.
Yeah. And it really makes me think about, business as a vehicle for personal growth. I mean, that's sort of a really common thought process. You want to grow like a human? Okay, get into business. You're going to find out all those things, right? And this is one of the prime lessons that I hear people learn, like how to deal with that. No, how to deal with that, how you identify yourself as a business owner versus as your business. Tell me, what advice would you give to somebody who's, maybe you said that you've been in business for 20, 21 years. What kind of advice would you give to somebody 10 years ago? What could help them along this path?
So I want to go back to that no for a second here. And in my book, Trust Based Selling, and I know it's not completely unique to me, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I reiterate it in the book. One of the things that you really want to do is you want to let your prospect know it's completely okay to say no to me. Let them know in the beginning, because if you can do that, first of all, as a business owner, you very well may be involved in a lot of sales, especially if you're a new coach. You're going to be doing the sales and you're going to be doing the coaching, right? You cannot separate the sales from the coaching unless you're letting a third party, VA or company doing the closing for you. You're still going to be doing a lot of that yourself. And the truth is that you probably want to do that yourself to know is the right person coming in as opposed to just anyone, right? You want to weed that out. So you're still doing the sale. But if you tell them up front, it's okay to say no, you really relax the conversation. You start taking it back to a basic level, and it allows you as a business owner to move on much quicker instead of focusing your time over here. One of the things, and I've been doing this myself for so many years, when people reach out to me, I say, look, you're in sales, I'm in sales, I completely understand. This is not the right thing for me. I'm just letting you know up front, it's not going to be something that we're going to be doing, at least for the foreseeable future, because I don't want to waste your time, right? It wastes mine, it wastes yours. I don't want to waste time. And so I just let them know this is what it is. And that is a huge thing. And if I would have been able to really 10, 15 years ago, been seeing that myself, it would have dramatically changed how I was operating the business.
So, even though you've got such a practical and tactical approach, underneath it is this mindset piece of permission. Give them permission, give yourself permission. And then there's a piece here too about, the person may say yes or they may say no, but if they're not the right match for you and for your business, you don't want that individual as your client. They're perfectly good people for somebody else, but they're not a match for you. And it's not a way to develop an aligned business. And for me, a truly profitable and satisfying business is working with the right people that you're meant to work with. And when you say yes to somebody that's not a match, you've taken away a spot from somebody who is a match. And so this permission piece is really important. That's great. Great
Thank
advice
you.
for somebody earlier in the game. Definitely. So, last question before we wrap up today. What is the one idea that you hope listeners carry with them after this conversation? What's the one thing?
The one thing, whether it's this particular conversation or any other conversation, is what is it that you are going to be doing to take action on? Right? We listen to so many podcasts, we go to so many webinars, conferences, programs of whatever sort, and so many people end up taking tons of notes. And when everything is said and done, they go back to the office or they turn off Zoom, they turn off the podcast, whatever it is, and they go about their day in the exact same position they were before they just did that. So if you're listening to this, write down that one thing. And it doesn't have to be 30 things because honestly, 30 things, my kids have ADHD. That's way too much. I can't do it. The one thing that you can do right now, write it down and then start doing it.
Learn, apply, do. I love it. It's great. Jennifer, I have enjoyed the conversation so much. Can you share how the listeners can find out more about you and also how they can take the assessment that you're offering?
Absolutely. Thank you. So not an assessment, it's more of a diagnostic. The
Okay.
diagnostic, if you go to revenuefrictionindex.com, again, that's revenuefrictionindex.com. You can go there, fill out the little form that's on the page. It'll take you right away into the diagnostic that will allow you to start understanding more about what you have in your business, what your personality traits are, things along those lines to really help you. That diagnostic in the piece that's there is really only about a 2 to 3 minute long exercise. So it's not like it's going to take you forever to fill it out. And then you can certainly connect with me as a result of there as well.
Right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation. And I know that the listeners are going to take away a lot from our talk as well.
Likewise, thank you so much, Candy.
I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. I learned a lot from Jennifer. I have a different perspective on many things. And as she suggested, listen to this episode, choose the one thing that you are going to take away and go and do that thing. Take action, make a difference in your business, and grow and be the person you want to be. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. If this conversation resonated, take a moment to reflect on what stood out and how it connects to where you are right now. Coaching businesses grow through clarity and thoughtful choices, not pressure or hustle. If you'd like more support, you can learn more at stepintosuccessnow.com. I'll put the link in the episode notes. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would share it with a peer or colleague who would enjoy it as well. I appreciate you being here. Have a great day.